So I'm getting ready to switch gears, focus less on the fart blossom projects. Go back in, I'm going to be starting some new projects, and I'm also going to be back with the 52 BMGs. Today I was rooting around trying to decide what my next build, my next project, my next adventure is going to be. And one of the things I ran across was a couple of cases from my bins of wildcats and experiments and whatever that illustrated something that I've never really been able to show well before. And that is one of the effects of excess headspace. Now understand, I went to gunsmithing school. I went to learn from the pros. I learned a lot of things, but most of the things I learned were about people. My teacher wasn't much good. He taught me mostly what I learned from him was to not to do things, not to think like he did. I learned about adults and how much they will hurt a poor little innocent kid when he doesn't know any better. And I was a smart kid. I still am the smart kid. I still am a nerd. So I asked the questions that matter. That really is what this channel is about. Cutting through the bullshit. Learning how to think. Learning. This is going to be, a lot of what we're talking about today is going to be about headspace. I went to school to learn how to build guns with a focus on safety. I mean, that was the purported purpose of the class. And early on, I asked questions about headspace. We were told too much is too dangerous, too little is too dangerous, 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 dangerous. Headspace is just the thing you have to strive for in the gun world because headspace is dangerous. So I asked, how? And the teacher would, I don't even want to talk about what the teacher did. The teacher was just dumb. It was his first year. I was a charter member. He taught for years. Whether he made any headway into the dumb, I don't know. I don't think so, because the dude never knew while I knew him, nor did he seem capable of rational thinking. So, how things have gone now, I don't know. But we're not going to teach rational thinking because that's impossible. I'm going to question your realities and I'm going to make you ask the questions, but then take it to the next step and answer those same questions. Formulate the tests. Formulate the math. Don't just take what people say on face value. Because people are people, and 90% of them are incapable of thought, incapable of rational, incapable of turning down a road, analyzing the situations and dealing with them. I might get a chance to talk about that Serbu that blew up. And all it takes is something like that for the haters and the chads and the speculators and the bloviators and the micturators and the public masticators come crawling out from behind every bush. Because they want to be relevant and they want to tell you what they think. Well, who gives a rat's patootie what you think? In the real world, jets fly through the sky and break the speed of sound because a bunch of people went out there and bashed their face against that wall till the freaking wall broke. And they broke the sound barrier. They broke the speed of sound. But you had the crazy machine drivers that drove the air machines that did it, but you had an equally crazy bunch of people behind it that applied the math and the physics and the science to make the thing work, because they had done some testing that showed that it could be done. Everything I'm going to say in this episode flies in the face of all the stuff we've heard about. Oh, look, yonder flies a bumblebee that's not even, science can't even show how it flies. Bullshit! Physics and science and smart people define everything, and all it takes is some kind of a slip up, and the peanut gallery just goes nuts. When I was a kid, actually I wasn't a kid, when I was going through the 80s in my impressionable years and trying to think, there were songs about something called the cult of personality, and I had no idea what it meant. What are you guys talking about? But there were other songs, there were other people in the public consciousness that had said things like, man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest. And no, I'm not. Well, it turns out that what those people are saying is true. And when it comes to going to a weird place like we've been doing with the fart projects, the subsonic projects, using powders that have never been used this way before, with bullets that didn't even exist a year ago, to produce a situation that you couldn't easily situations that couldn't even be really explored until recently. For instance, during the course of this little project with the 50 fart, the 1002 grain cutting edge bullet came out. It didn't exist before that. I had spent $500 having a custom one built by a guy in Australia, and went down the whole path with lead, ended up with paper patched, and then threw the whole project in the garbage because I couldn't get it to hold. But through this kind of stuff, the smart people, the people that matter to me, the curious people, the fathers and sons and grandfathers, the people who have their lives in order and then they want to go out and explore things like racing boats or, big block Chevys or jumping out of airplanes, or I don't care. None of these things are unsafe. This project of playing with 50, 60,000 PSI, that's pounds per square inch. I've had several people ask me, oh, I must be crazy, or why do you, or how do you feel safe, or how do you, at your age, aren't you responsible, on and on and on. Yes, I'm a responsible adult. And this isn't unsafe. But you bring up a little thing like PSI. You bring up a little thing like, PSI, to say again, is pounds per square inch. What we're actually relating to is pressure and blow-ups and pressure signs and headspace, and all this stuff is all jumbled together. And I'm not going to talk about how people ask me how I dare do it. I am going to try to explain to you how you can work your way through situations and be safe. Headspace dangers, every day of the week, people come on the internet and they ask the question, such and such happened to my gun. I had a high pressure event. They don't call it a high pressure event. They said I used the wrong powder, or I popped a primer, or I did this, or I did that. And as I said, all the wannabes come on and they talk about, oh, you might have stretched your lugs. Pressure like that can cause the lugs to fail. What if you increased your headspace? If you increase your headspace by even a few thousands, you could blow your face off. Another guy will come on and say something like, heavy bolt lift is a sign that maybe your headspace. Well, that's bullshit. Heavy boat lift has nothing to do with Headspace. If you don't, my grandma done told me, and my mama done passed it on to me, and my mama done taught me that if you don't have anything to contribute, if you don't have anything to say, if you don't have anything to add to the conversation, then please keep it inside your head. But in this age of internet influencers and lack of validation and whatever, everybody thinks that to be involved, you have to have an opinion. You can't set the lugs back. You can't set the lug abutments back. If you see ejector marks on your case, that's not Headspace, people. That's just too much pressure. I was talking with a guy tonight, and that's what kind of set me off on this. He's a nice guy. He's a hand loader. He said, I was still 2 grains down in the book, which translates to mean I was 2 grains under what's listed as max pressure in the book that I have, in a 30-06, that was written in 1987, that on and on and on. No, it says right in the book, and you have to read this. These numbers are only examples. In this gun, with this length barrel, and this brass, and this powder, and this, we got these results. Enter at your own risk. Learn to see pressure signs. But there's where it's sticky the wicket. Pressure signs. I spent some time with this 50 fart thing talking about pressure signs, and I feel like I need to talk more. And we need to talk about things that I didn't talk about, like bolt thrust. Recently this servo blew up on the internet, and I just ignored it because it's pretty obvious what happened. It isn't a strong design. It didn't account for case failure. Enough said. The only reason that I shouldn't really say that. I won't go into the whole story. You either know about the story or you don't know. And the reason it gets scary is because the simple fact is that the people in the world that buy things and support the economy are dumber than pus. They're incapable of thinking their way out of a paper bag. And they support the market. So you gotta fool them a little bit, or you've got to educate them all. Well, I might only educate, or now I have to be careful. Education's not about learning things. Einstein says this. Education is not about teaching. It's about teaching people to think. I could teach you. I went to school with those kids that memorized the whole textbook, and they passed their tests, and they blah, 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 and they understood nothing that they did. I'm sorry. If you're going to do stuff, that's not enough, people. The latest speculation and the latest validation and the latest assessment of the blown up servo says, pistol powder! Somebody somehow... A shot of pistol powder came down out of the sky and slipped into the reloading situation, and that case got... Bullshit! They had a case failure which caused the gun blow up. Let's just use really round numbers here. We're dealing with the 50 fart and the operating pressure that we have from 35,000 psi to 80,000 psi. Probably, depending on the brand, let's say to be safe, 65,000 psi. Within that range, we want to use an assortment of powders to push an assortment of bullets to all the same speed. That's what sets that situation up. There's many different ways to do it. And history is full of examples, and I've used bowling balls, and I've used punching things, and slapping things, and pushing things, and The world is full of applications of force. I'm not here to give you, I'm not qualified to give you a short course on physics. But there are certain things, certain tools in your arsenal and mine that we need to learn to use so that we can analyze. We can analyze. Experts are not worth talking about. Experts are smoke in the wind. People like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye the Science Guy get called experts. They're shills. They don't know anything. Dr. Witless Fauci cost us billions of dollars, set back our economy 10 years by being an expert with an agenda. I don't have an agenda. I'm also not an expert. I want you to be the experts. I want you to think like analysts. So I'm going to pan down to some things on the table here, and we'll see if we can do some analyzing. We'll talk about some of the current events, like that poor guy that blew up his Subaru. I mean, it's real. But the reason it's relevant to this channel is because we got people watching this, to follow this, to learn to do cool stuff. And to be comfortable doing cool stuff. And to be comfortable doing cool stuff. You have to understand the mechanism. You have to understand why. Why do things work? So I'm digging through my box of stuff and I ran across these cases that I had built when I was doing my, I call it my score gun development of a 308 style case. 308s are known because they have something called service rifle, and they're a NATO round, and they're manufactured by 100 different people in 1,000,000 different places in every little country around the world, and therefore that means they get more variance. And what I have learned, and I'm going to say I because I'm not going to include anybody else in this mess, at somewhere around 40,000 pounds, or let me put it another way, in situations where the pressures generated are under 45,000 or so, when I say pounds, that's pounds per square inch. This is only a tiny fraction of a square inch, like 0.18 of a square inch presented area. But this particular case is a 308 case. Now it's been bastardized, but all I want to do is let you see that move right there. This case was fired with excessive headspace. Here's another one. A couple of 308 cases that during the course of this development got fired. Now a regular case won't rock as long, and when it settles down differently. That's where this is rocking. This one's got a little, okay, this one is propped up a little bit. But the point is that rock that goes, see, that's touching down there and it's touching down there. Those rocks come from the fact that the primers are popped up. That means that the gun had excessive headspace. The firing pin pushes it forward, it fires, locks in place, and the headspace, if it has a little headspace, whatever headspace it has, which is the distance right here, is mapped by the primer popping out and staying out. Okay? In the case of something like dude's blow up, the Subaru blow up, we have to understand that in a normal design, the accepted long-term design, you take this big old 50 BMG and you go back to our, just let's say 50,000 PSI. Nothing excessive, 50,000 pounds per square inch. And it's in this part of the vessel and it's going in all directions, trying to tear the system apart. This is locked behind some big lugs and a blah, blah, blah. The most pressure even if this case fails, no matter what happens, that gas can go out and it can impinge and it can move around and it can get out and it can vent and it can go down the bolt and it can go in your eyes and you want to wear your safety glasses. But if this case ruptures, it can't pressure anything because there is no vehicle, there's no vessel, there's no mechanism. The most of that 50,000 psi can exert is on this 1/3 of an inch on the inside of this case. 1/4 inch, between 1/4 and 1/3 of an inch. It's not even 0.3 of an inch. Pushing straight back against these big threads and this big. And so all you can get, the absolute most that you can get here, this is called bolt thrust. The most bolt thrust you can get is maybe 20,000 pounds. And no matter what kind of a gun you build, 20,000 pounds doesn't do much to blow threads off or blow up a gun or create a situation. You know, these are big barrels, these are big threads. So all the normal guns out there, now you take a gun like the Serbu system, and it's got a bolt and it's all faced up and everything is good, but then it's got a cap over top of this that's this big around inside. Instead of having 1/3 of an inch, you push 50,000 psi against 1/3 of an inch, and the most you can generate, no matter what you do, if that pressure goes way up, the most you're ever going to get is maybe 30,000 psi, trying to separate that threaded action. 30,000 actual pounds. Go from pounds per square inch, that's how many square inches, now you got pounds. Now you take this same vessel and incorporate it into it, another sealed vessel around it, which is a pipe cap, like on the end of that Serbu. I'm not maligning the Serbu, I'm just saying that the rifle wasn't designed for a case failure. You got your 50,000 psi in there, and on a conventional rifle, you cut it loose and it bleeds, first off. There's no longer a contained vessel for it to be in. Second of all, it's still only pressing on this, there's not a bunch of pressure outside of it that's pressing against anything. Now you put a cap over this and all of a sudden you got 2.5 inches and 50,000 pounds. Well, do the math. Not only have we taken the 50,000 pound beast and let it loose on 1/4 inch or 1/3 of an inch, we've taken the 50,000 pound beast and we've let it loose and we've given it a lot more wall to work against. So that 50,000 exerts, 2.5, 3 inches. It exerts 10 times. It exerts 200,000 pounds on the vessel. So, learn to look at the situation, read the situation, and be safe, people. Don't ask pros to tell you. Don't believe me. Look at it and figure it out